All right, back again for part 3 for the 2009 Ford Escape Hybrid, the 2.5 liter. Did a bunch more research, so we're going to continue on. I know what the other problem with this vehicle is. The last part, if you remember, the transmission is replaced from a salvage yard, and the guts in the inside were not swapped over the inverter and the modules, so we had to use the Autel scan tool to reset the parameters or relearn or reprogram, if you want to call it that, so the transmission control module can communicate with the instrument cluster. So we did all that. That's all good. We had some issues with some U codes, but that's gone now because this battery was so weak. That's what was causing our U code communication. So we got a trickle charger back on it. That's all good. I got the key on, engine off, so the security lights gone, which obviously everything's good. So it should start, but it's not starting. We're going to go over that why. But they want to talk on this battery here. This car does not use an electric starter like a conventional vehicle would. There is no electric starter on this. This battery's there just to maintain system voltage for modules and so forth. There's no alternator. It uses a DC-DC converter right there, which is liquid cooled. But what actually starts this car in the back of these is that high voltage battery, or HV battery. This is the high voltage battery here. So how does this thing start? Well, if you look in the service data, there's a generator inside of the transmission that charges the high voltage battery and everything, but it also starts the vehicle. So let me pull up the service data here to show you that. Let me find it here. Right there. The generator is used as a starter for the internal combustion engine, charges the high voltage traction battery, and controls engine speed. So that battery in the back is what gives power to the generator inside of the transmission, which starts the engine. That is why this vehicle will not start. Even though we have no security light, we fixed that issue. So there's two issues with this vehicle. One is when they replaced the transmission, when the mechanic replaced it, he never did the relearn, nor did the dealership, which I don't know why they didn't do that. I guess they're incapable of doing that, even though they have the scan tool and software. But we took care of that. I don't know why. Again, like I said, maybe the mechanic didn't have the correct tooling, but obviously the local dealership at Mountain Home, they have the capability. I just, again, don't think they know what they're doing. Maybe they need to do a little more research and learn their job a little bit more. But if you look in here, now we have a high voltage issue, and the reason is because that wrench is on there. It says stop safely now. And then that exclamation point over there is on. So that's a giveaway there. See the stop safely now. And then we did a full system scan again, key on, engine off. 3 codes in the engine computer, 1 in the APIM, 1 in the battery control module. Well, the ones I care about, so the PCM, this one, the P01F00-26, battery energy control module performance, P1000, don't care about, that just means it hasn't done all of its drivability checks. And then the P1 Alpha 100-2B, hybrid powertrain control module, battery disabled. Don't care about the APIM one, but the battery control module, BCM in this case, not body control module, but battery control module, a P01F60 battery energy control module. So, and that's all to do with that high voltage battery in the back. So if you go to the BCM, battery control module, pull up our live data, which that pulls up, and we look at this here. There's your contact. So let's look at packs okay, state of charge, battery back voltage, got all this data in here. So what I'm looking at is, it says the battery pack integrity is okay, but the battery pack state of charge is pretty much, it's 0%, right? It doesn't mean it's 0% charge because the battery pack voltage is 295.16 volts. So it's 295 volts. I believe, and I have to look in the service data again, but I think if it's below 300 volts or 330 volts or something like that, it won't even, it just shuts itself down. It wants to protect itself so it doesn't ruin the battery. That's why its state of charge is, 0%. So, what led down this road? Well, after looking at kind of what everything happened, when the mechanic replaced the transmission, he did several things wrong. Well, from part one, he didn't even put all the hardware in right. The bolts, the exhaust gasket, the hangers on the exhaust, connectors. I mean, there's a lot of little stuff, and who knows what else he missed. That's one major issue. The other one is he didn't get a program between him and the dealership, the mechanic and the dealer. They didn't get a program correctly, which we took care of that with the Autel. So the instrument cluster and the transmission control module on these hybrids, they have to talk so they can start. There's a sequence of events through the PATs. We fixed that issue. Third, this car, I don't know, it sat for a month or 2 months, maybe even 3, I'm not sure exactly. But you should disconnect the battery, obviously, where it sits. But you should also disconnect the battery back here from lock to unlock to service. So high voltage, and you put over here, no voltage is going through it. Why? That way there's no voltage being going through that battery, and you unhook the battery up here, and it even tells you that in the service manual. So the mechanic that did this job drained it very far down, the HV, the high voltage battery in the back, and now it won't start. So what do we got to do? Well, if you had like a 05 to 08, this is an 09, but in the corner there, can't really get in there, but if it's an 05 to 08, there's a button that lets the 12 volt battery up here it has circuitry tied to the back HV battery to get that battery a little charged so it can start the vehicle. Well, 09 Ford got rid of that. So what we have to do now, because there's no plug on the back of this battery, we got to disconnect it, take this battery out, and charge it. But you cannot use a conventional charger because you're talking, 300 and some, almost 400 and some volts. So we can't just use a regular 12 volt charger. They have high voltage chargers, but they're very expensive. You can get a hold of one of those, or we can charge individual the cell packs in here. I don't know how many there are, 100 or a couple hundred, I'm not sure, but little tiny batteries like this big. You know, if they're 4.2 or 4.6 volts a piece, roughly. We don't only rip that apart, but we can charge those in pairs, or maybe 5, 6, 7 at a time to get and balance charges to get this back to life with some DC power supplies. That's the only thing we can do right now, because if you were to get a new battery for this, the cheapest I could find is almost $4,000 for one of these batteries for the back. So that is how we troubleshot this vehicle. But to recap on it, I know I'm kind of beating a dead horse, but the mechanic, he thoroughly screwed this one up by not putting all the hardware correctly in, missing gaskets, missing hangers for the exhaust, missing connectors. Put the transmission in, he didn't get a program correctly, so the instrument cluster won't talk between TCM and the instrument cluster, whether that's his issue and or the dealership should have figured that one out as well. And the individual paid good money for this, well over $1,000 just for the labor. So and then the third part is he didn't disconnect the battery up here and the high voltage battery in the back while it was sitting for that long. So now a lot more work has to be done to get this battery out to bring it back to life. And then what we'll do is we'll bring it back to life, clear out those codes, run it again, do diagnostics, find bolts to put this thing back together, run it, ops check it, and then make sure it's all good to go. So that is it for this vehicle right now. We'll remove the battery, and then we'll get it out of there and try to get it back charged up. I'll try to make a video on that as well, and then we'll go from there. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and remove the battery, the high voltage battery in the back. But I did look one of these codes up for the battery control module, just to show you here. So the 0 Alpha 1 Foxtrot battery energy control module has internal errors. If there are any internal errors of the high voltage traction battery caused by sensor failure, control module failure, or other serious related faults internal to the HVTB, which a serious fault would be low voltage, will cause the BCM HVTB to set this diagnostic trouble code. We already know the problem is low voltage, but it tells you to wear high voltage insulated safety gloves and a face shield when working with high voltage. Batteries and cables, so I just wanted to put that out there. It also tells you to put leather gloves on the outside, so make sure you're safe with all that. Turn the ignition off, unhook the batteries, wait for 5 minutes after you unhook the ignition. The high voltage battery cables and wiring are orange in color. The nominal high voltage traction battery voltage is, there it is, 330 volts DC. Depower the voltage before carrying out removal. Tells you to do all this stuff in here. And then, yeah, we're not going to go through all those default isolation there because we know what the problem is. So we disconnected the negative battery cable, the keys out of the ignition. It's been well over 5 minutes. And then if you look back here, this plug, we went to, it was locked for voltage, high voltage. We went to unlock, pulled it out. There's your two connectors. There's like a fusible link in there, it looks like. So we got that out. I think there's 9 bolts around the perimeter of this. There's a connector back there we're going to remove. The high voltage cables, positive, negative, there remove. Then we're going to lift this thing out with the straps. And then we'll get it out. And then we'll have to take this apart and figure out how we're going to charge this thing. Already removing these plugs in the back here. Got all the bolts out. And then we'll get this thing lifted out of here. Well, if you do go through this fault isolation here for this code P0A1F, you go through where we're at down here. It says if the concern is still present, basically check the pins, make sure this pins, just resistance across this, less than 1 ohm, pushed out pins. We checked all that, it's all good. We know the reason is because the mechanic let the vehicle sit for so long without unhooking the batteries. But if you have these concerns, it basically tells you to replace the high voltage traction battery. But we're not going to replace it because, like I said, it's very, very expensive. We are just going to go ahead and remove it, and so we can get it hopefully charged back up. And the scan to a live data showed us all of that. It's at, 0% charged. So now he's removing this connector here, or the shield. Obviously this is disconnected. So again, follow the safety cautions. There's your positive and your negative symbol. So now we're going to go ahead and get this guy off. So he just lifted that arm up there. He's going to slide it out of there now. Go right there, and you are good. Keep sliding. Give you a better look here. So you move that arm up, and you just slide this back. There ain't much room in here. We'll get it slid back and lift the battery out. So, that light. If you look at this, it'll pull it forward. I'm not going to move it. It pulls it forward and it moves it back. So now we just got to lift it out and slide it out of there. So there's a handle there and a handle there. You're going to want 2 people because this thing is very heavy. If you notice, there's some vents there that blows through. There's cooling fans in this thing, I believe, to cool this battery. So we're not going to pull it out yet. It is very heavy. We may not even have to pull it out. The reason I say that, because it looks like somebody's already been in here and made a little cannon plug, or a little plug. And the reason I'll show you that is because this, I don't believe, is from the factory. They drilled a hole in the side there with 2 wires coming out so they could charge it while it's in the vehicle if this ever happened, which is a good idea. You hook this up. But we have to have the proper charger that goes to, a few hundred volts, maybe an amp or 2 max, or maybe a little bit more to charge this thing. If you can get a charger like that, I know they're expensive, but there's other ways to use it, like an LED ballast or something. We can charge it. If not, we're going to have to pull the battery out, remove all these security bolts here, and then charge all these little cells individually. I think it said in the service manual there's 50 cells or something like that. So yeah, we'll try to find a charger and go from there. Now we got that shrink tubing off. It looks like it's just a little plug they use on an RC car. We got that plug back into lock. Go ahead and hold that. And we're going to see our voltage. So we can use this to charge. Move this up here. We can't touch this together, otherwise we'll have major problems. So if you look, we're on the 1000 scale. DC, once it clears up, 1000 DC scale. We're at 298 volts DC. So what that means, and that's what we got on the scan tool roughly, is around that. We're under the 300 or the 330 minimum, whatever it was. That's why it's not doing it. So hypothetically, we don't need to take this out. As long as we can get a charger that's capable to hook up to this, that would save us a lot of time. We can just charge it right here. Somebody already did the work, put this plug in. I mean, it's a 10, 11-year-old vehicle. And then we can charge it. If not, we have to rip all this apart, use power supplies, do all this cells separately. But if we can get a charger or like an LED ballast or something that can go up to that voltage at a small amperage, this will be a lot easier. So we're going to go find one of those, try to source one, get this thing charged up, get it running, and then do all the drivability tests and go from there. So we pulled that plug out. I just want to show you, if you want to grab that there, that there is no voltage now with that plug out.
I can just...
As long as you don't cross them, just to make sure. Flip them around. There you go. Negative. Just flip your leads around. It doesn't matter for the polarity, but... So obviously 0 volts because we got that plug out. So that shows you that it's disabled. So yet again, like I said, we're trying to find a charger so we can get this thing charged up. It'll save us a lot of time. And go from there.